We had two federal court decisions this week that put President Trump's Liberation Day tariffs in a suspended state. And, I'll give this, there was somewhat of a victory yesterday in an appeals court, at least for one of those two rulings. But the whiplash from court decisions like this has certainly caused some potential economic ramifications. And what will that be long term? Will this upset the economy? Will the stock market suffer? We got a lot of questions to discuss this, and here to go down this path with me is economist Spencer Morrison. He's the editor-in-chief of the National Economics Editorial, and he's also author of Reshore, How Tariffs Will Bring Our Jobs Home and Revive the American Dream. Spencer, welcome back to Washington Watch. Good to have you.
Thanks a lot. I love coming on the program. It's always a pleasure.
Well, we love having you. All right, let's go through this, the rulings from this past week. What were the core arguments in all this? What in the bottom line do these things say?
Well, I mean, ultimately, the dispute is whether or not the executive branch, that is President Trump, has the authority to regulate commerce and international trade. Can he impose the tariffs? And this all stems from the Constitution, right? Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1 of the Constitution pretty clearly says that Congress has the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, excises, and to regulate commerce with foreign nations. Nobody's actually disputing that. President Trump's executive orders were all grounded in what's called delegated authority. So Congress has the authority to delegate certain powers to the executive branch when they believe that the executive branch is in a better position to deal with those issues. Because, of course, the executive branch is the one that carries out the laws, and they're a lot more nimble. It takes a long time for Congress to actually get together and deal with these situations, and the executive branch can deal with them on the ground on a rapid basis. So this is really just lawfare trying to upset the President Trump administration, right? We saw it. We see it consistently with illegal immigration. The courts are protecting people who are in America illegally. And now what the courts are doing is they're protecting foreign companies and foreign governments that apparently have a right to dump their products and to destroy American businesses through unfair competition. That's essentially what the court is saying.
Yeah, while you were actually going down that with the Constitution, I was thinking to myself, I was saying, but Congress has delegated this authority to the executive branch. And of course, you brought that up. So that's a huge part of this whole thing. You actually had a post, a Substack post, where you argued what you were just now saying. And I'd like for you to go a little bit further, that these tariffs by the president are in fact legal. So go a little bit further into that, if you would, as to why is that? Why is this legal? Let me put this in two phases. Why is this legal? And then secondly, if it's legal, why is he facing so much resistance?
Well, to begin with, they fall squarely within the letter of the law. Congress has delegated powers. So, for example, under the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act, the president has broad powers to regulate commerce and impose tariffs in cases of national emergency. This is why President Trump declared the fentanyl national emergency, or instituting this 20% tariff on China, and Canada and Mexico, right? Fentanyl is clearly a national emergency. Over 50,000 Americans die every year from opioid overdoses, in addition to another 20 or so thousand, 30,000 that come in through other drugs that are smuggled into the country. You got to remember, like Hurricane Katrina was clearly a national emergency. It killed 1,392 people. We're talking about 70, 80,000 people dying every year from drugs that are being smuggled in on packages that are coming in through the de minimis exemption and all sorts of stuff. And I don't really see how you can deal with this unless you're investigating these packages, the provenance of where they're coming from, and and you're taxing and regulating them. So I think the president is well within his scope to deal with tariffs on that basis. And perhaps more importantly, the Trade Act of 74, Trade Act of 1930, the president has the power to deal with countries that are discriminating against American products. And the reality is that every country on earth is discriminating against American products because they're imposing tariffs of their own. They're imposing non-monetary barriers to entry. And that is de facto discrimination against American goods, right? Every country does it to protect their own goods. But apparently when America does it, it's illegal. That's what the court is saying. And this brings me to answer the second portion of your question, where you asked, why why is this happening? Well, the reason why it's happening is because there's a lot of money to be made in perpetuating the trade deficit. They make so Wall Street, these investors, BlackRock, all these guys are making money in two ways. They're making money by offshoring the production to foreign countries where they take advantage of cheap labor. And then number two, they take advantage of the fact that this creates, so when you offshore products and you have a trade deficit, this creates enormous demand for American currency because of something called the balance of payments. So when Americans are buying products, that money, we have to exchange currency. The only way we can exchange a currency is by selling assets and debts. So if we're running a $1.2 trillion trade deficit in goods, we pay for it by selling $1.2 trillion worth of assets, so real estate, stocks, and then debt.
Right.
And that benefits Wall Street. So they're getting paid $1.2 trillion a year to sell us out. That's what's happening, and that's why they're fighting so hard against this.
Wow. All right, so we've only got about a minute left. How is this going? We have these whiplash decisions, as I've described it here today, from the courts. How is this going to impact consumers, investors, stock market? Sorry, we've only got about a minute, but how would you reply to that?
Well, it's utterly terrible. It's terrible for everybody. The reality, and this is part of the problem with the way this is all being implemented. This is President Trump standing against the judiciary, standing against Congress, standing against Wall Street, standing against all of these special interests. What we need is a comprehensive tariff policy where the tariffs are instituted so that they're high enough to promote the reshoring of economic production and they're stable enough to promote business. What the court is doing is they're destabilizing the market, which is undermining President Trump's ability to reindustrialize America. So this is not helpful. And I talk about this all about in my book. This is all about reshoring and bringing the factories and the jobs back home. We need stable tariffs and we need high tariffs. The court's undermining that.
Reshore, how tariffs will bring our jobs home and revive the American dream. Thank you so much, Spencer Morrison, Editor-in-Chief of the National Economics Editorial. We appreciate it very much.